But I am Dave. I'm qualified to speak here. I'm an alcoholic. And I've been through the steps as they're laid out in the big book with the help of a sponsor who's also been through the big book. I try to live this program. It's kind of the code for my life. And I still have resentments to make. A lot of them have to do with the step that we're studying today. And it'll be questionable whether they do more harm than good in making them. And I'll cross that bridge when I get to it. I'll say this too. This is where I started my recovery in 2018. As you know from maybe hearing me speak in meetings or something, I tried a lot of ways to stop drinking. I drank to excess. I had no problem drinking to blackout or anything like that. I never had that message in my head, why don't you slow down? I put at risk myself, my wife, my kids, other people on the road, other people by my judgment, things like that. And as important as that, or perhaps more importantly, I was obsessed with alcohol. When I wasn't drinking, when I was at work, when I was dealing with something, it was like, I can't wait to get home and drink. Is there enough in the refrigerator? I was a volume drinker. I didn't drink hard stuff. I drank beer and wine. I don't know why the book at some point kind of suggests I'll just drink beer and wine. Let me tell you, that's not a solution. Because there was never enough. I would always drink more than I ever intended, and it led to all problems. But I was really obsessed with it. And I won't recount all the ways that I tried to solve the alcohol problem, but let me put this up front because it may be the most important thing that I'm going to say today. This program, and this program only, is the only thing that worked for me in getting me not only sober, but to some measure of sanity. Going through this program, I realized how much I lived under delusions and just things I made up. They had no basis in fact or in truth, and yet that's what was occupying my thinking. If you're thinking about doing this work, if you've just started, I really urge you to stay with it. I will tell you that, so now I am going to recount things. Taking music lessons, getting a graduate degree, going to meditation classes, they're all great things to do, but you're still going to be an alcoholic. If you really want to stop drinking, there may be other ways to do it, but this one works. I used to fantasize about, I wonder if I could get from St. Patrick's Day to Memorial Day weekend without drinking. Like I'd put on a real can on St. Patrick's Day, get drunk with all my friends, be really hungover so I wouldn't feel like drinking for a few days, and then see if I could get all the way to Memorial Day. I never got close. Like everyone did this morning, I came down the stairs here in January of 2018. I haven't had a drink since then. I cannot believe that has happened. And again, this is a pitch to perhaps new folks. I cannot tell you how much better my life is having stopped drinking. And I came in here thinking, man, life is going to suck. So now I don't drink anymore. I have all my other problems, and now I don't get to drink either. But it turned out to be 180 degrees the other way. I'm a happier person. I hope some people think that I'm a better person. I have more to contribute. You get that in AA. I'm glad you're here, and I'll say in connection with that, thank you, because this was my meeting, and many of you who are in this room had so much to do with my recovery. All right, I think I've avoided the subject as much as I could. I did get some very good advice when I told someone that this is what I was speaking on. They said, well, if you're speaking on the third part of step 4, don't do a step 5. So I'm not going to. Let me just put things in context a little bit and talk about, I think we're talking about process, about looking at relationships as an important part of our recovery. I'll go back to page 45 in our book, because the book doesn't say what this is about is sobriety or anything else. It says, the main object of this book, quote, is to enable you to find a power greater than yourself, which will solve your problem. That's what the book is about. When it talks about, this is all from We Agnostics, they talk about, we hope you've kind of figured out whether or not you're alcoholic. And if, when you honestly want to, you find you cannot quit entirely, or when drinking you have little control over the amount you take, that was me, you're probably alcoholic. In that case, you may be suffering from an illness which only a spiritual experience can conquer. So that's what we're working toward. That's the goal. You're going to create a relationship with a higher power. You're going to have a spiritual solution. And that is why when you do this program, you become a happier and better person. Far from missing alcohol, you'll stop thinking about it, and you'll be thinking about other people, and you'll have a more fulfilling life. It's just better. About sex. It's such a fundamental part of our lives that it becomes, by the way, I'm saying all this, I'm qualified to speak because I've been through the steps. I'm not a scholar on alcoholism, on recovery, or anything like that. I'm just sharing my thoughts for what they're worth. But as I understood it, it's a way to look at your past conduct. And so we have this important component of our lives. Our sex drive is important to us. We all need human contact. We all need to feel loved and affirmed. And, love is sex is a great way to reinforce that, to communicate it. It's a really wonderful thing. But most of us, and I was one of them, needed an overhauling. And when I say an overhaul, I don't mean like, we're going to change the windows or a couple of things. It was like, we're taking this thing down to the studs. New wiring, new plumbing. We're doing the whole thing over. And we're going to look at our relationships. The first paragraph says we try to be sensible on this. And I think, in my view, that takes us to the second paragraph where we go to the questions that we're going to ask. But there's this first paragraph that those who think that sex is this is about procreation and it's nothing else, and then others who think we just need to have more and more of it. It's interesting because this is how the paragraph ends. We all have sex problems. We'd hardly be human if we didn't. What can we do about them? We don't want to be an arbiter of anyone's sex conduct. In some ways, it's okay, we appreciate everybody has all these views about it. Whatever they are, in some ways, it doesn't matter. What we're doing here is we're just looking at our sex conduct. And we're looking at it to get an understanding of how the same things that drive our alcoholic thinking drove our sex conduct. In some ways, I think sex and alcohol, at least in my own life, were very similar. There were things that I went to for consolation, because I wanted to feel, life wasn't making me feel loved enough, or I wasn't getting affirmed where I needed to be affirmed. And so having sex relations with people just for my own gratification gave me something that I needed, just the way alcohol did. It kind of fed into the delusions. And in many ways, the morning after, if it wasn't a hangover, it was like waking up and being like, man, I wish that hadn't happened. But look, it did, and that's the way it goes. So we were looking at it, and that was the process that I followed with the help of my sponsor. I made the list of the people who I had hurt. in my sex conduct. And I answered those questions. Was I selfish, dishonest, inconsiderate? Did I unjustifiably arouse jealousy, suspicion, or bitterness? Where was I at fault? And what should I have done instead? And it was interesting as I went through it, how frequently I was writing down the same thing, no matter what person I was thinking about, or what the situation was. What surprised me most about it was, what should I have done instead? And I think in every one of my answers, by this point in step 4, and I had gone through a lot of resentments and a lot of fears, I was writing down that I really should have gone to God, or my higher power, however you want to express it, and asked for help. What should I have done about this? You know, if I was feeling lonely and not loved, why wouldn't I have just gone to God and said, look, this is what I'm feeling? Look, some of it's due to immaturity, puberty, you know, you're going through a lot. I understand that. And that's why, as I look back on this, I've been able to forgive myself, and therefore I've been able to forgive others. But what surprised me about this is, I grew up in a household where the presence of God and higher power was probably one of the most conspicuous components of my childhood. We said prayers before and after every meal. I went to Catholic schools. There was a nun in the front of the classroom. There was a cross on the wall. We started the day with prayers. Our holidays were feast days. You know, we were off the day after Halloween because it was All Saints' Day. We were off December 8th. We were off for a week after Easter because, you know, Christ rose from the dead. You'd think somebody being brought up in that would have kind of gotten the idea that maybe there's a solution here. But I can tell you that the area of my sex relations was an area where I thought, I never thought about God. I mean, even if in other things I did, I got that inkling from God that, you know, maybe I'm not doing the right thing. I'm not sure I ever felt that in my sex relations. And that, I mean, again, I don't say this on with any type of authority, but that was my experience. I was like, I don't know why I didn't go to God with these issues, especially now with the benefit of having gone through this process and seeing how a higher power can change your life. How could it change those things? Look, I don't say them with regret. We all have to go through life. This is my journey. This is my path. But that was the solution. I think I've given you my opinion about why I think they focus on sex, because it is so important. It is a very good way to look at our past conduct. We all have that history there. We all have those relationships we regret, and I think it is very illuminating about our conduct. Interestingly, the book in the next paragraph goes on to say, we treat sex as we would any other problem. I mean, the book could have done, a financial inventory. I'm sure that wouldn't have been as much fun. Okay, now about finances. But you could look at it and think about how you dealt with other people in terms of money. That's also a fairly important thing in life. And money we stole, money we borrowed with no intention of ever paying back and never did so, things like that. So, I mean, that's how, I guess that's what I have on sex situation and step 4. Thank goodness. See you later. I actually didn't create an ideal about sex, but it's in some ways I'm glad that I didn't. It's an evolving process, like so much of what AA is. It's interesting. I was always a little suspicious of this paragraph. Suppose we fall short on the chosen ideal. It led me to believe that one of our founders was a philanderer, and it was like, I really need to write this because I'm not the best about this particular thing. That was pretty negative thinking about it. I think it's a very good point for all of us, though, because none of us is perfect. It may be about sex conduct. It may be about something else. It may be about honesty. It may be about selfishness, where you walk away from something. You know, when we do our 10th step and said, you know, I really could have handled that better. I could have been much more compassionate or sensitive for someone. But the thing is, it's progress and it's not perfection. We're never going to get perfection. That's the downside. The upside is there's always progress. You are never done. So if you're new, you should be hopeful, almost, I know this is going to sound corny, you should almost be excited about what's ahead, because this is such a great process and you can continue to grow through it. That's all I have. Thank you for listening.